After a paternity test proved I'm not the father of my twins, I delivered the divorce papers to my wife. My soon-to-be ex-wife and I began dating when we were both 16, but we had known each other since middle school. I would say that our relationship back then was strong. We were the type of kids who avoided any situation with too much conflict, so we did our best to be understanding of one another. There was nothing in our 8 years of dating that stood out to me as potential issues. We never had breaks, and we went to the same university. If she cheated during that time period, the only way I would know would be through a confession, but I'm not going to wait for one. After graduation, we went on to work at the same company, but in separate fields. I knew what her schedule was, and she knew mine. We would even meet whenever we had spare time for lunch. We got married in June 2008, and shortly after, my mother passed away in a car accident. I cut my honeymoon short to attend her funeral. My soon-to-be ex-wife was supportive of me at the time. She took care of everything while I grieved for my mother with my father. The house, the bills, therapy sessions, emotional support. She did everything a person could, and that was who I saw as my wife. Whoever she is now, I have no idea. I struggled with depression and nearly lost my career. If it hadn't been for my father and her, I don't think I would have ever recovered. I came out of it with the knowledge that my loved ones would have wanted me to be better. So I worked 3 times harder to advance in my career. I wanted to be able to support a family that my father could spoil as a grandfather. My soon-to-be ex-wife, while also advancing in her career, seemed shocked at my drive. I recall her saying that she didn't think she could keep up with me and that she was worried I would leave her behind. Perhaps she developed an insecurity there. I was able to build enough capital to purchase a good house, and we began trying for a baby in 2012. It was during this period that she cheated on me. There was no indication that she was cheating. No drop in sex drive, no hiding of text messages on her phone. There wasn't even a single mention of any new friends. I had no clues whatsoever. As far as I knew at the time, our efforts were paying off. So once my twins were born, I had everything I dreamed of, a loving wife, children to adore, and my father's chance to spoil them. He was so happy and loved them with all his heart. He passed away only 2 years ago, practically thanking me with tears for being his son. I don't even want to know what would have happened had he been here to witness all this. As time went on, there were cracks showing in my soon-to-be ex-wife's narrative. In every argument since then, she would call the twins my twins, accuse me of flirting with coworkers, or grill me on what kind of women I preferred, even though she already knew. What seemed to be small issues to me, in hindsight, were red flags pointing to her having an affair. Then quarantine hit, and we were both thankfully able to work from home, albeit with a hit to our salaries. My soon-to-be ex-wife mentioned that she had taken an ancestry test in the past, and I was hopeful that I could find distant relatives to connect with. I wanted to map out a complete family tree to show off to the twins and even plan a scavenger hunt around it. Needless to say, when I pitched the idea to my soon-to-be ex-wife, she panicked. She told me it was the stupidest idea she had ever heard and that I already had the family I wanted. What if the relatives I found were dangerous or even criminals? She was grasping at straws to dissuade me from taking that test. I could feel a knot in my gut that wouldn't go away. Why would she be so against my finding family members, especially now that I had none left breathing? So I secretly had my twins and me take the test and treated them afterward to buy their silence. Waiting for the results was hell on earth. My soon-to-be ex-wife seemed to catch my unease and tried to distract me with sex, meals, and date nights. I also had the stress of making sure my twins wouldn't mention the test to her, so I bought them a Nintendo Switch to preoccupy them. They had been begging for one, so I was hoping that would be enough. Once the results came in last week, I saw I wasn't even considered a close match to them. The closest I found to their biological parents was my soon-to-be ex-wife and a name I didn't recognize. I nearly vomited right then and there. I had to get out of there. So I waited until my soon-to-be ex-wife left on a run, packed up, told my twins I was going on a work trip, and called a colleague to help me find a place to stay. He was kind enough to let me stay with him until I was back on my feet. I took leave from work and spent nearly 2 days just crying and cursing my soon-to-be ex-wife. She would call and text nearly non-stop until I told her that I knew about the twins and muted her. Then I got angry. I had to find the other man and make him understand what he did to my family. He was extremely active on social media, so I knew his face and recognized a park outside his apartment window in a specific post. From what I could tell, he was single and had never been married. I then waited in that park the next day and was lucky enough to catch him while he was on a jog. He looked so much like me, just with a longer face and thinner hair. I called his name and asked him if he knew my soon-to-be ex-wife. He seemed confused at first, but when I showed him a picture, he actually recognized her and told me he had met her during a work conference 8 years ago. I asked him if he slept with her, and he told me right then and there that they did. He seemed to understand where this was headed and asked me who. I'm not going to lie, there were numerous instances where I wanted to punch his lights out, but I had to keep my cool. I couldn't afford to get any marks on my record, and an assault charge would have put me out of a job. We sat down on a park bench and swapped stories. When he found out that the twins were likely his, he was shell-shocked. He got on his knees and begged me to give him a chance to get to know them and to be a father, he said. I told someone here that I had never seen a man as distraught as him until I looked in the mirror after the confrontation. At the moment, I have no reason to distrust him. He's been more open than she has been. Nevertheless, I won't allow him to meet the twins without a professional to mediate the doubt. I had to call him to inform him of that. I told him it was to protect the mental health of the twins, to which he agreed. Now I'm just waiting for the legal side of things to run its course. I was told by the attorney I interviewed that I needed some documents I had left back home. I'm not looking forward to that. My soon-to-be ex-wife would most likely refuse to allow anyone else to get those documents and might even call the police if pushed hard enough. Now for the first update. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I made my first post. I had hoped I could do more during that time frame, but life tends to mess with you. First things first, I had to go back to my home to pick up some documents, as people advised. I had an officer escort me and also kept a voice recorder ready. Where I live, there is no need for both sides to consent to being recorded, so it was perfectly legal. I went back about 5 days ago after talking to my attorney and receiving counseling from my therapist. When I got there, I couldn't see her car in the driveway, nor could I tell if she was still home. It brought me comfort knowing that I wouldn't have to interact with her yet. What made my blood boil, however, was opening my door and seeing the twins in the hallway crying. When they saw me, they rushed to hug me. While that wasn't unusual, the urgency with which they did it made me worry about what could have happened. Perhaps this was me trying to distract myself from the pain I felt when I looked at them, but I zeroed in on why they were so upset to see me. They told me that mom had just left and that she was mad at them, that she kept crying all the time and would scream at them whenever they asked about me. They thought I had run away and that I was never coming back. One of them literally pulled me to the kitchen and pointed at the floor, saying that mom had shattered a glass while shouting at them and that the shards had hurt them. While they were trying to inform me of all this, I could feel my heart splitting in two. Half of me wanted to flee from the scene with them and protect them, while the other half was worried about how my soon-to-be ex-wife could twist this to make herself a victim. There were no visible signs of abuse, but I'm worried about what it could escalate to. There was no doubt in my mind that she had been drinking heavily. She has a history of alcoholism. Her family is big on drinking. I haven't seen her drink since we were engaged, and it's possible she relapsed. I only had a handful of minutes left to collect my documents, so I told the twins that I had to rush back to work and that I love them. I contacted their mother right after and told her that I wanted the twins to stay with me for a while. Her voice was extremely slurred, so I knew she was drunk already. At 3 in the afternoon, she began bawling and apologizing for everything she had done, saying she was a horrible person without me and that she made a terrible mistake by cheating on the perfect husband. I told her that until she could get a handle on her drinking, she had to let the twins stay with me. It took a while, but I was able to convince her that the twins were better off with me for now. The next day, I went back to my old home with a friend who housed me. God knows how, but she made it back there yesterday and handed me the twins, all the while telling me how they missed me and asking for a date when I would come back home. I know she was betting on the twins to lure me back in. She is unaware that I already found their father and began filing for a divorce. Now they're here with me, and the other man isn't aware of that. I continued reading the responses to my older posts, and people pointed out that the agreeable nature of our meeting was strange and concerning. I was too blinded by the relief I felt at finding an agreeable person to notice. Now that I did, I looked into the National Sex Offender Registry, and he wasn't there, thank God. I looked even deeper into his social media, searching for anything that stood out, and found comments from 2 years ago mentioning that he was engaged to someone. Seeing no posts of him with a woman or man in a romantic light, I can only assume the relationship fell apart. That was the end of my findings. I contacted him and told him that if he truly wanted to become a father, we needed complete transparency between each other. I told him that I knew nothing about his past or the kinds of romantic relationships he tended to build. I needed to trust that he would be good to the twins and that any future partner he may have would be the same. I offered to do the same if he wanted me to, but he refused, saying he would do it if it was necessary. I know polygraph results aren't always accurate, but it was the only thing I could think of at the time. The most reasonable theory I have is that the reason for his engagement breaking down was the same reason he was so driven to take on the role of a father. Perhaps a miscarriage or something. We'll take that test later this week. I assume I can pick which questions he has to answer, but if that's wrong, please let me know. Beyond that, my STD test came back clean. I'm okay seeing the twins all the time now. It hurts hearing them call me dad, it feels like a stab in the chest each time. And hugging them makes me feel like a criminal. But I'm dealing with it. I'll try to keep recording all our interactions so that my soon-to-be ex-wife can't accuse me of anything. And I have plenty of recordings that she won't like getting out. Needless to say, I've also had a paternity test done, and it's official, I'm not their father. Well, if I was correct in my assumption, this was around the time I texted her that I knew the twins weren't mine, and she must have gone ballistic. Sherry told me that their mother was yelling that I should have been able to love them as if they were mine and not run away. So, my coming back must have made them think all of that wasn't true. My behavior during their time with me, however, must have made them concerned. They noticed the drop in my gestures of affection. They wanted more hugs, more lap-sitting, more piggyback rides, and so on. But I simply couldn't do it as much as I used to. I tried. I really do, but I can't stop feeling like I shouldn't do those things. I've talked to my therapist about it, and she told me that's common for men struggling with paternity. Only time will tell what I can and can no longer do. My original plan of breaking it to them slowly, with a professional at the ready, is completely in the gutter. They had their first in-person therapy session about 3 days ago, and 2 online sessions before that. So far, no mention of me not being their father has been brought up. We've mostly been focusing on what they had seen and how that made them feel. I can't go into much detail here, as the post would go on for too long. So, that's my situation right now. It's been a month since I first discovered everything, and I can't believe so much has happened in such a short time. I've had divorce papers ready for a week now and just need to decide whether I'll still be financially responsible for the twins or whether that responsibility will fall to the biological parents. If I decide not to be responsible, I'll need to file a petition to remove my name from the birth certificate, which would mean I would have no grounds to fight for custody. I won't deny that I want a family of my own, and I want to be able to fully support them without having to pay child support to my soon-to-be ex-wife. In the end, I'm damned if I do and damned if I don't. I'll have to sacrifice so much for either option, and there's no clear right thing to do. I must either sacrifice a chance to have children of my own or sacrifice the twins that I've raised and loved for 8 years. Most of you must be baffled by this, but it's actually suffocating for me. Each passing second feels like a noose that gets tighter and tighter. Now for the top comments. Some people here seem to be pretty naive. You're right to not want to pay child support. Trust me, most women are not looking to get hitched and start a family with a man who is paying child support for 2 kids, let alone kids that aren't his. Oh, and by the way, paying alimony to an ex-wife who defrauded him about the paternity of those kids. Do whatever you need to get that woman completely off your back and out of your life. Your desire to have biological children is completely legitimate. Do what you need to do to facilitate that goal becoming a reality. There's no way in hell your soon-to-be ex-wife will ever co-parent with you. If you believe there is a way for you to get any form of custody here, you're being delusional. You're already vetting the biological dad to step into the role of father. Once that happens, your soon-to-be ex-wife will have to split time with this guy. Do you think she won't try to make your life a living hell for that, regardless of whether it's right or wrong? The good thing is how well you're working with the biological dad, as he seems to take your concerns seriously. Ally with him, as he will need your support throughout this. Perhaps your lawyer can represent him. This will be very important later. We all get it, leaving the twins will hurt like hell. But again, think with your brain, not your heart. You are way beyond having a life that resembles what you had 6 months ago. No matter what, your daughters have a shaky foundation as it is. If you try to legally gain custody, the courts could burden you with ridiculous child support and alimony payments that go to your wife. Despite this being her fault, she will resent you for these events and take your money hand over fist while trashing you to the twins. The smart play is to sever all legal and financial ties as much as possible. Help the biological dad establish his place in the twins' lives. That way, you can move on with your life while still knowing how the twins are doing. When their mother trash talks you to them, you'll have someone who will correct the story and sing your praises. Now for the final update. Before I begin, I want to thank everyone for all the support and advice you've given me. You've all saved my life in more ways than one. I apologize for not updating until now. I was advised by my therapist to avoid being influenced by too many other perspectives and opinions in order to faithfully discuss my own feelings with him. I informed my therapist about making one final post, and he told me that while he advised against it, he couldn't decide that for me. So, this may be my final post, at least until everything is truly said and done. My soon-to-be ex-wife left the rehab center earlier than her caretakers advised, about 8 days after my last post. I had already prepared divorce papers for her to sign and had her served while she and her sister were at my old home. She called me and tried to plead with me not to go through with it, saying this would tear the family apart. I couldn't stand it. I wish I could say I was calm and methodical in my response, but that would be a lie. I was vitriolic and resentful. I told her that the family was torn before it began, that she was a disgusting slimy creature who couldn't even love her own kids right, and that she was the lowest life form I had ever had the displeasure of knowing. I said a lot more than that. Those were the nicest things I mentioned. I could feel the shock in her voice at all the hateful things I had said. I was lucky that I wasn't at my apartment when she called. The twins were spared from seeing me lose control like that. Regardless, she got the message that I was serious about the divorce and pulled a 180. Now she has sent me threatening messages saying she'll take every penny I have. I've been documenting every conversation and message I could get before blocking her, informing her that I would only contact her through my attorney. She hadn't mentioned or asked about the twins up to this day. I blocked her on January 16th, and I noted that the deadline is coming up, yet she still hasn't responded in any legal capacity. The twins have been doing much better. They have been recovering from all the shock and upheavals that have been thrown their way since this all began. It's clear that they haven't really processed that another man is their biological father, and their therapist has discussed with me that a lot more work needs to be done before really tackling that issue. The way they learn their true parentage could have serious repercussions if not handled correctly. For that reason, I've decided to hold off on any meeting between them and the biological dad. The biological dad has let me know just how disappointed he is, but he understands the reason behind it. He has actually begun to pay me back for all the money I have spent on the twins' education. So far, he's paid me $6,524. The guy has really been trying to pay me back. I've kept records of his payments and haven't touched the money yet. I would rather put it into some kind of savings account for the twins and for myself. I've been doing much better mentally. I've continued to sketch and draw whenever I'm alone so that I don't let my mind wander too much. I've also rekindled my childhood love for gaming, buying myself a PS4 2 weeks ago. PS5s are nowhere to be found these days, but I've been enjoying it ever since. The twins and I play together when we can, and it's helped ease the pain I felt when interacting with them. But it's clear that every single one of us has been traumatized by my soon-to-be ex-wife's actions. I have been putting off any decisions about custody, at least until my therapist and I have the utmost confidence in my emotional stability. If there are any questions, I will be happy to answer what I can. Now for the top comments. Dude, I admire you for your girls. You are their father. Don't forget that. No other man will do what you did. If not, you love them like a father. Her treatment of the kids during this and her not asking about them in your last call is disturbing. It seems like she sees it as being their fault. Sad. Yeah, I used to think the world of her. Now I can't recognize the person she's become. I'm so impressed with the way you have handled this most excruciatingly painful event a man could ever experience. After reading the painful details from your now-dead marriage, I think that I'm finally going to spend the money and get an at-home paternity test myself. I've been talking myself out of it for months, but fear of the results is not a valid excuse. Thank you for friend. Don't make the same mistake I did in telling my wife about the test. Regardless of what you discover, I'm here if you need me. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to the story. I hope you all enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel to get notified when a new